How we're going to structure this call today is basically we're going to keep it pretty casual. Also, I feel like asking like 3 questions, and then afterwards we're going to open it up to a Q&A. If you guys have any questions for the people who are attending, please type the questions into the chat. For the sake of not like blowing the bandwidth on Zoom, I just wanted to mute everyone else for this call, and then I'll unmute you guys one by one to ask your questions that you put in the chat afterwards, if that's okay. So yeah, before we start, do you guys want to introduce yourselves, Kevin, Ria?
Yeah, Kevin, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I can go first. I went to Cal Poly. I graduated in 2016. I don't remember what year it was, but I graduated like around 4 years ago. I am now a program manager at Google. I work in our go-to-market organization, which is essentially responsible for we do all these cool projects at Google, and our go-to-market is essentially responsible for how we make the revenue and provide the funding in order to do those cool projects, and how we can essentially keep the business going at Google. And before that, I was in consulting. I was in PwC advisory, and I did M&A and deals consulting for about 2 years. And while I was at Cal Poly, I was a business major with a concentration in information systems.
Yeah. So my name's Ria. I graduated from Cal Poly in 2017, so not super long ago. I have been at Google now I work at Google. I've been here about 2 years. So I was actually a sport management grad at Cal Poly, which falls under the RPTA major. If you guys have heard it, or I guess it's not RPTA anymore. It's EIM, Experience Industry Management. So that was my major. I was in the College of Ag. And then I worked in events for about 2 years after graduation, or maybe closer to a year and a half. And then I switched over to being a contractor at Google. So I worked in recruiting for Google Cloud. That was an awesome experience. I was a contractor, so my time at the company was limited, but I really liked Google, so I wanted to stay. So I applied to a few roles that I thought I'd be qualified for that were full-time within the company. And the one I got is called an administrative business partner. We abbreviate it ABP. It's similar to an executive assistant, but there's a lot more responsibilities that come with it. It's kind of a mix between managing the budgets for your team and planning all their events. My favorite part, which is giving out swag to everybody, which is always people's favorite thing. So yeah, I've been in this role for about 8 months now. So yeah, it's a little about me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really great to hear about your guys' backgrounds and experience. So I'm gonna start off with the first question. So basically, since a lot of us are now working remotely, and most of us, or actually all of us, are taking classes online, it's kind of easy to get carried away with just staring at our computer screen for hours on end. So do you guys have any tips maybe on maintaining a good work-life balance at home, not getting too carried away maybe with doing work all the time, since it's your computer's in front of you and it's just really easily accessible at all cases?
I think for me, the thing that has been the toughest, but what I've needed to really set in stone from when this whole period started, because I think I'm on personally week 9 now of working from home, because we started a little earlier than a lot of companies, is just set my working hours and stick to them. Because I think it's since now there's no physical difference between your home and your office, it's really hard to get away from work. Because I mean, for me, my personal laptop is my work laptop. So if I want to watch Netflix or, shop on Amazon or do something that's just for me, it's just a swipe over to check my email, check my pings, see what's going on and, what I can do for work. So just setting those work hours and sticking to them has helped me a lot. So now when I look at the clock and it hits 5, I just close all my tabs that are related to work. I don't even think about it. I'm just done. I'm not looking at any of this anymore. And that's kind of what's kept me sane, I guess, during this, this unprecedented
time. First of all, mad respect to being an ABP at Google. They're I don't know how guys are able to stay so organized all the time. And yeah, definitely the swag is the cool, really cool part of it. So
Swag. Thank you.
yeah. So in terms of how I'm trying to stay productive, given this kind of unprecedented work situation, is um, I think the first and most important thing is know that you're not going to be as productive as you are normally. And you have to accept the fact that you're not, and you have to plan for it. And we do this in all of our projects right now where we're saying like we know you might say, you might think that you're going to be productive, but we're going to go ahead and just plan a 20% reduction in efficiency just because it's it's human nature, right? Like you're going to get distracted. And in terms of like how I try to keep not distracted is I wrote a couple of things down that I do is uh, so one thing that helps is actually getting dressed in the morning. I know at Google we don't really have a dress code, but like it just helps to like actually get up, like do your hair and put on like a dress shirt and put on pants. Like it just kind of gets you in the mood for it. The other thing is try to have like this is not possible for everyone, but try to have a degree of separation of like where you work versus where you live. I'm just in a room, so I'm just here all day. But like if you have like a kitchen, try to work in your kitchen, uh, and try to utilize different areas to separate what is work and what is life. Let's see what else. Take short breaks. You want to you want to stay focused, but you will run out of energy. And like what really helps me is every like couple of hours, I try to just go outside and take a walk. Um, so that helps a lot. And the last thing I have on here is, and this is different for everyone. So some people, like Ria mentioned, is they like to kind of keep their work within like a certain like limit or certain hours of the day. But for other people, like especially a lot of folks who have kids, um, they will need to kind of flex how they spend their hours, right? Like some people on my team work for like 2 hours in the morning, hang out with their kids for 5 hours, and then come back online at night. So like work in the hours that are flexible for you. If you feel like setting like a hard 9 to 5 doesn't work too well. So yeah, those are my points.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for your tips. So, the second question is kind of due to the pandemic, a lot of students have had their internship offers rescinded and they're kind of lost on how they can make their summer productive since their original plan was canceled. Do you have any advice for students who are still trying to make last minute plans for the summer or any ideas maybe for projects that they can build in lieu of internships?
Yeah, I can start with this one. So I know you guys have probably heard this 1,000 times from alum and your professors or maybe your counselors, but networking is something that you should really, really, really take advantage of during the time you're in college, especially just as much as you can. Um, so at Google, we sort of have clubs. We call them Google groups, but they're similar to clubs at Cal Poly where you can meet up and host events and whatnot. So I decided right when I started that I was going to create a new group for Cal Poly alum who work at Google because I saw it was tremendous the amount of people that work at Google who graduated from Cal Poly. So I figured we needed a group for that to get together and celebrate just being Cal Poly alum. So within a week, about 400 people joined the group. And the question that I keep getting and that I still keep getting over and over again from members is about opportunities to meet current students. So if any of you guys are familiar with or signed up for Cal Poly Day at Google, the entire reason I created that event and the reason that it got started is because of Google employees' desire to connect with you guys. So, and even when asking for volunteers for that event, the response was absolutely overwhelming. I even had to limit the employees who could volunteer. So we had a sign up process just to be a volunteer for the event, if you can believe it. So there are a ton of people who truly do want to connect with you. And I don't know what I suggest and something that I did during periods of college when I was not employed was just go on LinkedIn and I would use the filters to find just a Cal Poly alum with say a job you have or a job at a company you want to work at, and just hit them up, ask them to chat, ask them if they have 30 minutes to just talk about their job, talk about their experience. The worst thing that can happen is they either don't have time or they don't respond to you. It's no big deal, just try it again with somebody else. Yeah, so I mean, if an internship was taken away from you, which I can't even imagine going through that, that's just awful. Or if you can't find a position right now, just truly take advantage of this time you do have to connect with people. It will be worth it.
Um, I didn't know that you created that group, Ria. I'm part of that group as well, and I'm looking at the post. So thank you
Woo.
for creating that. And I will.
Yeah.
I see the post for the volunteer sign up. Sweet. Okay. So in terms of wow, that's really cool. Okay. So in terms of like okay, so you're in this position where you may have had a like a internship rescinded or something that you had originally planned is now canceled. So first of all, it happens and it sucks, and it's not the greatest outcome, especially it's just kind of like a wrench in your plans. But I would say like similar to Ray, like take advantage of this opportunity that you're going to have. Like once you graduate college, you will never have this amount of free time. You will never have an opportunity like this again. You like summers don't exist once you start working, and I know that sounds kind of like you might, but for most people you may not. So like yeah, you can do a lot of work stuff, and you can like go out and do a lot of networking and like learn like new skills that apply to work. But I would also say like you're still in college, so you should take advantage of this time to do something that is like fun and something that you're interested in. So it doesn't have to be like work related. It doesn't have to be like an app that you want to build because you want to put it on your resume. Like take advantage of this opportunity that you have, like this free time that you have to do something that you're like truly interested in. And you may find that like, hey, maybe I'm not that interested in like consulting and I really like philosophy or something like that, right? Because like the ultimate goal isn't like to get a good job and be like make a lot of money or whatever. Like the ultimate goal is for you to like do something that you're really happy and passionate about, right? And like so depending on how you define what your success is, like this is the time that you can take now to experiment and explore like stuff that you've never had a time to kind of dig into before. So that's my perception.
Awesome. I felt like that was like a mini TED Talk, super inspirational. All right. So before opening it up to everybody else, the last question I have for you guys is for those of us who still have internships and full-time jobs that have now transitioned to like a remote feature, what is your advice on making the most out of our experiences despite not getting face-to-face interaction with our managers or our teammates or fellow interns that we would have met at our internship?
So one thing that I did when I first started my current role was I do work from home a lot, so the transition wasn't super drastic for me. I live pretty far from my office, so I'm fortunate enough to be able to work from home quite a bit. So, when I started, there were a lot of times where I would join meetings virtually just because it was a day that I was working from home, and, it is hard to meet people, but, like I said, one thing I did when I first started was I introduced myself whenever I was in meetings, with new groups of people. So, I would just, like, take a second at the beginning of the meeting to say what my role is, what my responsibilities are, and just how I can help that specific group. It's kinda just a quick and easy way to let people know that you do exist, like that you've started at the company, and that you're there and that you do want to make an impact. Also, just putting a name to a face. I'm sure you're CC'd on emails and it's a new person and they don't know who this is yet. So it's just a good way to just initially introduce yourself. And then one tip is I just suggest keeping your video on throughout new meetings. You don't have to do this, throughout your whole internship, but at least when you introduce yourself, just because I think it's so easy to just, join a meeting, keep on mute, turn your video off. You can be in your underwear and cooking, or you can be doing whatever you want. Um, but keeping your video on, it shows the team that you're engaged and that you do wanna be there and that you wanna learn. So, I think that's probably my 2 cents to making the most of, a virtual internship.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. It's like soup. Yeah, those are like the top pointers, I would say. So in terms of like how, I don't think I have too much to add in terms of like how you should make it work, but I will add this, that like doing these types of meetings over video conferencing is going to be the future. And it's good that you're starting now during your internship to do this, because I didn't have that experience during my internship. And when I started in the actual workforce, and even right now, so right now I have like a team of 70 people in India, and I only work with engineers in Shanghai. So I literally don't have any team members in the United States. So like for me, there hasn't been too much of a change. But what's been really important is like you have to develop the skill of being just as effective in these virtual meetings as you are in person. And that is going to be the future for a lot of companies as like outsourcing and international work continues to grow. Um, it's such a key skill to have now, that like you not only need to be effective in in-person meetings, but also like uh, good in like virtual meetings. Oh, actually, I do have one point that is helpful. Is what is it? Like the background that you have is like important. Like try to sit in a place that doesn't have a super distracting background. I know I have this like weird vacuum thing in my background, but like there's some people who have like really distracting backgrounds, and like you just have to like take everything into consideration. Um, yeah, so that's my 2 cents.
I don't know, Kevin. I haven't really been listening to you. I've just been staring at your vacuum all meeting. Is that a Dyson?
Yeah, it is. It is the Dyson. It's actually a great vacuum, by the way. If you're looking for one, it's really good.
This video is sponsored by Dyson. Awesome. Yeah. So that's great. Thank you so much for answering those questions. At this point in time, I'm just going to open it up to people. So I'm going to unmute everybody one by one, in order of the questions that are being asked in the chat. When you guys do ask the questions, please make sure to specify whether you're asking the question to Kevin or Ria or both of them. So the first question is from, I think, Andrea. So I'm going to unmute you and you can ask your question.
Hey, well, thank you guys for being here and answering our questions. I was just wondering, this question is kind of for both of you. I'm sure we all know of like the great like amenities Google provides. So like, I know you have a rule of like food can't be too far from you and right, like casual dress sometimes. But aside from all of that, I'm just wondering what makes Google like a unique employer and what excites you the most about coming to work.
Thinking.
Thinking.
I think for me, it's kind of a mix of two things. So one, it's the flexibility. Like I said, I live super far. I mean, not super far, but I live about an hour commute away from work. And when I made the move, it was just, it was the right decision for me. But I was just terrified of possibly making that commute and commuting 10 hours every week just to come into work. And I asked my manager, I just casually brought it up to him, can I work from home on Mondays and Fridays? And he said, yeah, absolutely. No one wants to do that commute. So I think that's just one small example of how understanding and flexible all the people I work with are, especially now more than ever when, I live alone, and I don't have any kids or anything like that. But for the people who do, I know that they're just super grateful for the flexibility that Google's allowed, during this work from home period, during the shelter in place. Like Kevin said, even though you might not have your job be affected by work from home, like for me, I'm just as productive as I would be in the office. The company kind of as a whole automatically said, we're going to decrease our productivity to about 80%, just across the company, because that's what we figure it'll be for everybody. And even if it's not, I just think like the flexibility that the company is giving everybody is just so nice, and it's so thoughtful. And I feel cared for here, whereas, in other companies, I feel like it's just felt like a business, and it just feels like I'm, like a worker bee or something like that. But at Google, I feel like I'm heard and I matter, and the company cares about me. Yeah, so that's mine.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like, I think I also have a really long commute. So I live in Sunnyvale, but my actual office is in San Francisco. So it takes me like an hour and a half to get to my actual office. So I also work from home a lot because like who wants to do that kind of commute? And my team is super flexible about it. Like and um, it's just yeah, that's one great example of the flexibility that we have. Another thing is because I'm like down here and a lot of Google offices are in the South Bay, I like just go into other random offices because like every office has different types of food. And like wouldn't it be nice if you can have go to a different restaurant every day? So like so yeah, that's another nice thing. And also like my team isn't here, so I don't really have to sit with anyone. Um, and another like thing about flexibility is like my manager right now has kids and her like work situation with Google is that she only works 4 days a week. So she takes a 3 day weekend every week, and that's like totally fine. And it's something that people do. If it works for them, then like it works for them, and Google will like try to help and be as accommodating as possible. Um, and I'll also add that like the what I really like about Google and what like keeps me coming to work is um like my managers like care for me as like a person, right? Whereas before it was like, did you get like when I had meetings with my manager, it would be like, oh, did you get this work done? Did you like finish that in time? Like, how are you doing on this? Now it's more like when I have one-on-one meetings with my manager, is all about like, how do you feel? Like, is there anything that's like troubling you? Like, how can I help you? Like, be like passionate. How can I help you be more like happy and efficient in the work that you're doing? And that's like a very different like paradigm shift from like typical corporate jobs, I feel like.
Thank you
Awesome,
guys.
that's great to hear. So our next question is from Miriam, and I'm going to unmute you now. It's not working. Can you unmute yourself? I don't know why it's not letting me unmute you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hi, thank you for coming and talking to us. This question is kind of similar to the previous one that you guys answered, but and this is for both of you. What's the most fulfilling part of your job? And also, what was something like an experience at Google that made you realize that you're really passionate about like your position, or like what makes you like excited to go to work every day, essentially?
I think so I have one specific moment kind of where I felt, where it because of this moment, I was super excited to go into work every day, and I honestly, I started going into work on Fridays just because I wanted to see the team more sometimes. So as an admin, as an AVP, um, I'm in a non-tech role. I sit in a building that's probably has 400 engineers and product managers. I'm the youngest in the building, by far, by a long shot. I'm one of the only females as well. So it was just a huge transition from the recruiting world, which is very, at least the campus that I was on in Mountain View for recruiting, it was predominantly white and predominantly on the younger side. There weren't too many people even over the age of 35. And so it was just a really big transition for me to go from that environment to just a straight up engineering environment. It felt like I was 5 again and visiting, like, my dad's office. It was just terrifying. And I'd say for the first, like, 3 months, no one really knew who I was. Everyone would kinda look at me. Um, and, I'm not wearing, like, sweatshirts to work every day, so you just kinda stand out alone when you're not doing that. And so I didn't really feel, like, comfortable in my own office, but then the swag came, that's like the moment that changed it for me. I ordered like the coolest swag for my team and I spent like a ton of money on them. And it just got everybody so excited. And, like when they came to pick up all the swag, they had to check in me. So it was a chance for me to introduce myself and put a name to a face for the people that I was working with. So after that week of like this huge swag distribution that I did for my team, everyone in the office would say hi to me. Everybody knew who I was. And it like brought everything together because up until that point, I was just this person who people would send me emails to ask, any random question that their lead couldn't answer. That's kind of what an admin does. It's like we have a phrase like ask the admin, or I guess that's just a generic phrase. But yeah, I think that moment for me was when it just clicked, and when I felt like I was part of the team, and when it felt like I wasn't just a desk. It's like I was at my desk sitting with my team. So yeah, that's that's my answer.
I'll start by saying, Rhea, ordering swag is super hard because like you have to accommodate for like everyone on your team, and there's always people who are like, oh, I don't like this. Like, why do we choose this? And it's like you have to get like consensus from all your like directors and VPs, and it's like actually a very hard job to do. So like kudos for like landing that.
The trick is you
Okay.
just go with Patagonia, and everyone's happy.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so in terms of what's fulfilling for me, I think like what's fulfilling for me is as a program manager, I work on specific like business processes and products, and um, one of the things that matters a lot for me is that like the stuff that I build and the things that I work on impact like individuals, and um, like whereas before in consulting, like yeah, whatever I was building is just like nice for it's good for whatever company I was working with, and it's like yeah, thanks for helping us save and make all this money. But now I think like the perspective is different. At Google, a lot of the stuff we design isn't geared towards like how much revenue we can generate, and it's geared towards like user satisfaction. And I think that's like really key because versus like before where you're trying to build the most like economically feasible product, and it's still important, but like now like we try to build things that are useful for the user and things that people like and enjoy using. And I think that's very satisfying when you're able to launch a product that people are like, wow, this product, and however like miniature or small it is, has impacted this person's life like positively. And I think that's really fulfilling. In terms of like a moment that really made me like Google is so at Google we have like a lot of clubs, and one of those clubs is a gardening club. And in one of our offices we have a rooftop garden. And before the virus started, I would go on Fridays in the middle of the day and garden and like pull out worms and like plant seeds, and then I'd go back and go into my meetings. And I think that's like just sitting out there on that garden, like looking around, seeing the campus, like my hands have worms on them, and I'm at work. It's just like I don't know, just that moment was just like amazing. Like wow, this is nice. So yeah, that's my moment.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That was really
Sure.
interesting.
Awesome. Yeah. So before we jump to the next question, I see that Avery has joined the call. So Avery, do you want to take a moment to like introduce yourself to everyone here?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Everybody
Okay,
else is
great.
muted, so they can, but yeah.
Awesome. I just sometimes have trouble. I am also at Google, and sometimes when we switch to Zoom, like our computers don't really
Yeah.
like it.
Mhm.
But my name's Averie Wracher, and I do work for Google. I work as a strategic account manager in their global partnerships division. I've been at Google now for about going on 5 to 6 months, and prior to that, I lived in Seattle and I worked for Amazon in the retail side. So I had made the move down to San Francisco, but I graduated from Cal Poly in 2016 with a business degree and concentration in marketing. And then I also had a concentration in finance before you could double do that stuff that they allow now. But anyway, excited to talk with you guys.
Yeah, cool. So just to kind of update you on the structure right now, we're just opening up to like a Q&A. So everybody else is asking questions and I'm unmuting them one by one. Depending on who they address the question to, like you guys can answer it, or if you guys can all chip in, that would be awesome as well. So our next question looks like it's for just Kevin, but it's from Nolan, and I'm gonna unmute him. Let me find him really quickly. Or Nolan, if you can unmute yourself, that'd be great. I'm like scrolling through the attendees list.
Am I unmuted right now?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, this is a question for Kevin. What was it like transitioning from consulting at a big four like PwC to Google and why did you make the change?
Yeah, I'll keep this quick so other people have time to answer their questions. But I'll be straightforward with you. I hated life in PwC consulting. I was working 16 hours a day, like 6 days a week. My manager didn't care about me as a person. I was traveling every single day of the week, which is kind of nice, but like it's not sustainable. And I was just like, I'm over this. And that's when I decided to make the change. And I think uh, the transition itself is just a vast cultural change compared to like how you're treated as an individual at Google versus how you're treated as an individual in Big Four. Um, I don't want to like downplay people who are going to start their career in Big Four consulting because it is an immense experience. Like it will teach you so much about what you need to do and what you need to learn going into the corporate world. But I will say that it is for some people like me, it just wasn't my thing because you have to work a lot and you have to work very hard. And it is a very linear process of associate, senior associate, manager, and so forth. Yeah, so I decided to make the move because I was like, I don't know, I'm over this, and I can use my skills to better the world with Google. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, our next question is from Yoav. Oh, he has two questions. So Yoav, I'm gonna unmute you.
Oh.
Go for it.
Okay, thank you so much, guys, for coming. This is really an honor to talk to all three of you guys. I actually also live in Sunnyvale, Kevin, so it's ironic. But anyways, the first question I have is for Kevin. How was the transition from like M&A consulting, which is like more finance related, to a more technical PM role? Like, did you feel like you were behind other people that have been doing PM for like since they started, or did you were able to adapt pretty quickly?
Yeah, I definitely felt behind when I first started. So for me, the transition is like in normal M&A work, you do like work on projects, but you're not a PM, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me and why I ended up working 16 hours a day is like after my day job, I would take on a separate, unrelated to mergers and acquisitions project where I was a PM on a technical project. And that like when I went into Google, like in the interview process and like when I was talking about my role, I focused specifically on that snippet of my work because that was what what transferred most to my current role. But yeah, I felt behind because I didn't have the experience. I didn't take all of like the PM tests that you have to take. But like you learn as you go. You make a lot of mistakes, and those are great ways for you to learn. And you don't necessarily have to follow everything by the book. Like everything that you're reading right now in a textbook doesn't necessarily apply in the real world very well. Like you're reading about all of these like methods and all these like procedures and processes. Like I can't remember them anymore, but like a lot of them is just like it's important to have that grounded knowledge, but in the real world, you may not actually use them, and you just sometimes kind of just have to fling it, and you won't have time to like look back in your textbook and how it is done. You just kind of have to do it based on experience, I guess. So yeah.
Awesome. And then the second question, this is like for everyone that has an opinion on this. I was just really wondering with like currently the advertisement industry is doing really bad and like Google's main source of revenue is that. So how do you think like your approach to your forecasted revenue or like your future revenue is going to change due to this like pandemic?
Yeah, I can answer that because I work specifically in the advertising sector. I mean, I think you guys have been hearing this on the news that it's so unprecedented. So obviously there's nothing that we could have forecasted to predict this. I think now with where the models are and the forecasting capabilities that we have, we can predict what's like the new normal. What the pressure happens and occurs now is how do you predict the rebound and what that will look like? And even more, what is it going to look like next year when you have to do any kind of year over year modeling? So I think at this point, what's interesting about the advertising space is that people are still online and are still looking at things, but their views have definitely shifted on what they're looking at. So it's been super interesting to work on those projects and to get an understanding of like when people are in lockdown, what does that curve look like from the initial panic to when they're starting to settle down to being in quarantine for a really long time and what they look into, and then what will that look like as people start to move back to work. So I think it, like any problem that you're probably getting in school, it's just a different type of forecasting model that we're looking at right now. I will say though, like I think while people say it's like a big switch, I think advertising will rebound because eventually people will go back to work and things will settle back into what they were, not necessarily the same, but we expect levels to return to around where they were before this all started.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Next question is from Daryl. So I'm gonna mute him. I don't know why my Zoom's not letting me unmute people. Daryl, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, that would be fantastic. Okay, maybe not. I can just ask this question for him. But Daryl's question is, how do you stay motivated and find satisfaction in your work? Do you feel like you have ownership over your projects? So yeah, anybody can take that one if they want to.
Yeah, I can take this one. I think counter to popular belief, like even though people are working from home and are quote unquote like disconnected, I actually feel a lot more connected to my team during this time because I'm seeing them face to face. So for me specifically, I'm in the San Francisco office. Half my team's located in Mountain View and the other half of my team is located in New York. So I don't often get a lot of face to face time with the New York teams. So this has actually been awesome to get a lot of face time with the New York teams. In terms of staying productive, I think it has been tough to stay continuously productive throughout the day, but what I'm actually noticing and what a lot of my colleagues are noticing is that we're working more hours being on quarantine because it just kind of fits whenever my schedule happens. So I'm currently living at home with my parents. I moved back here just during this quarantine time, and I'm the oldest of four. And so for me, like morning times are really stressful to work because all my siblings are up and doing crazy things. So I prefer actually to work in the evening time, which means I'm working a lot more hours than I would be normally. So I find that my productivity varies throughout the day instead of being really concentrated within like the 8 or 9 or 10 hours that it would normally be at work. But I'm also, I think that's been a positive of quarantine. I'd be curious to see other people who are working, how they feel about it. I've gotten to like go on bike rides and runs and obviously do not as many outdoor things as I would if we weren't in quarantine, but I also have a really flexible schedule because of quarantine, which has been really nice. And I think it's allowed me to work on projects that I just haven't quote unquote had the time for in the past because things have been so regimented and scheduled. Whereas now I think I have built out more time to do things that are more like passion projects personally and for work, which has been really nice. And I hope that I get to bring that back with me when we are back into the office. So that's how I feel about it.
Anybody else has
Yeah,
something?
I definitely agree. I feel a lot more connected to my team now that we're in this situation. I feel like there's been a lot more, at least for me, just my calendar is just filled with kind of these more fun events. There's like a daily coffee meeting and an evening, just an evening check-in meeting, like all these meetings people are making just to check in on everybody's well-being. So I mean, I get excited when I join those because it's like we're not working, we're trying to stay away from work talk and we're just catching up with each other and just checking in on how people are doing. Sometimes people like bringing in their kids and they're like holding up their infant and you're like, oh cool, this is this is a real person and they're going through this, I'm going through this. And it's just made me feel more connected, like I said before. And then what is it? So do you feel like you own your own projects? Um, so my role specifically is very individual. There are other admins that I work with, but they each support different teams. So I'm a single admin for three separate teams. So I'm like their go-to person for a lot of different things, which just makes it very individual and makes it not a super team-based role. I get to I'm the single decision maker for a lot of things. So yeah, I mean, I love it. There's with the fun stuff, like events is my specialty. That's my background for the most part. Like at Cal Poly, that's mainly what I did. And it's really empowering to decide what your team is gonna do and have at the end of, a full event, everyone come up to you and be like, this was awesome. We don't do stuff like this. So yeah, I totally enjoy, owning my own projects in my current role.
Awesome. Kevin, do you have anything to add to that, or are you good?
Yeah, I can add to it, given that I don't see another question coming, so we can fill out the time with me talking.
I think there are questions. People are just like sending them to me privately, some like chat.
Oh, okay.
But it's okay. You can add
And
them.
I will. Okay, cool. I will stay quick then. Yeah, the meetings, we have like weekly meetings with our team, and we like do not talk about work. We just talk about like what kind of food are you making, like just fun stuff that isn't work related. And I think that brings you closer. And like another thing about the background is like we will talk about each other's background, like, oh wow, like did you get a new piece of furniture, or like, oh, I like that art. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of like fun things. In terms of like, do you own your own project? At Google, if you are a individual contributor, so there's like managers and then there's individual contributors. If you're an individual contributor, you own your project. Like you are responsible for like everything related to your project, especially as like a program manager or a PM. You have to set your timeline, your milestones, and like your manager is just there to like help you like be a happy person. Like your manager isn't going to tell you like you should do this, you should do that. You have to dictate all of those details yourself, and you have to be responsible for them. That's it.
Yeah. So our next question is from Fernando. If you can unmute yourself and ask your question, that'd be awesome.
Hi. So my question is, looking back, what factors during your time in school, specifically outside of the classroom, do you think prepared you the most for working at a company with a culture like Google's?
There's like that awkward pause as we all wait to see if anybody jumps on. I'm trying to think outside of school. I think outside of the classroom, right? Like Cal Poly's learned by doing. I think everybody would tout that is very helpful to working at Google. I think what's great about Google actually is that, and I worked at Amazon previously, and I think Amazon was and I had a great experience, but I think Amazon specifically recruited a very type A person who fit a very specific mold. Whereas I think Google is very interesting in their recruiting process. They look for all different people with all different types of backgrounds, not just your skill set that you're bringing to the job, but also your personal skill set. So we refer to that as like how googly you are. So I find that really interesting because I think there are a lot of different personalities and different backgrounds that can do the same role, but they can bring very different things to the table. And Google actually prioritizes that as a benefit to hiring. So I think even if you're working with product managers, you could be working with product managers who do things very differently, who have very different backgrounds and very different personalities. And it's always a benefit to the team. So we look for diversity in our teams, both in thought and skill set and background. So I think as many experiences as you can have. Obviously, I think it's great to always get an internship and to have that experience. I personally didn't have a lot of internships because I played sports in college, and then I was an out-of-state student, so I didn't have that on my background, which was really stressful when I was searching for a job. But I think I sought out a lot of different experiences working in the community or having a job on campus. Or as I said, I played sports, and I think all of those things you can build a well-rounded view into what your college experience looks like, and you can articulate that to employers once you're out of college as well. And I think you don't just have to have the internships or the job, and obviously those are benefits, but anything that you do in college should be a benefit on top of your experience.
Awesome. Okay, and it looks like Lonnie has a question for Ria. So if you want to ask that.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lonnie. So I was just curious about your journey. Why did you decide to transition from recruiting into your current role? I guess for some context, I have a recruiting internship for this summer, so I'm just wondering what you felt like was kind of missing for you in that role that you have now.
Yeah, sure. So I think the biggest factor for me was, like I said, with a with my position in recruiting, I was called a TVC. We call them TVCs at Google. It's called a temp, a vendor, or a contractor. When you're a contractor, your time is limited. So I had a contract for 2 years. So I knew going in that this wouldn't last, and I either had to get converted within the company, or if I didn't like Google at all, find something else. So that was the biggest factor alone. But I think what made me decide not to continue with recruiting was it was just my personal experience. In my role, I felt like I was on call a bit, and that's not really how I operate. I didn't want to um I get very stressed if I'm not responding to something, so it is very hard for me to define my working hours, for me to ignore something even if it's 9 p.m. and someone's like, "Quick, or help, I need, I can't do my interview tomorrow because my kid is sick and I have to take them to the doctor," whatever. Something like that would happen all the time, and for me, it didn't feel good not responding to those things, but then I also needed to separate my work-life balance. So I just think recruiting wasn't a fit for me. It wasn't anything that had to do with, I'd say, the company as a whole. And I think recruiting maybe somewhere else I would have liked. It didn't feel like a fit. Given this is not a recruiter position, so I wasn't a recruiter. I was kind of step below that. So it was a recruiting coordinator position, which really your role there is just scheduling interviews and making sure they happen, and then you kind of push it on to the recruiter who finishes the process for the candidate. Um, yeah, I just think it wasn't really a fit for me. But there are a lot of people on my team who converted from that role into being full-time employees, and they love it. So yeah, it was just a personal decision, and I'm super happy in my current role. So I'm kind of glad I made that change just on a whim. So
Awesome, that's great to hear. I think our next question comes from Kaylin. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, hi guys. Thank you for coming out. My question is kind of just to whoever wants to answer. But I was curious, like, what kinds of opportunities there are to kind of cross over into different sectors of Google. So, like, maybe from the product manager side, like, how often are you guys crossing into marketing or engineering combining with sales, or does that exist at all?
I can answer this one. So there is a excuse me, there is a lot of like cross-channel, like functional like cooperation that you have to do. Like as a program manager, I'm not a PM, not a product or project manager. So I sit on the business side. So if I want something developed, I have to go and talk to the PMs, and I have to go talk to the engineers. But like I also need to talk to my customers. So like if I'm building a product for like say our Google sales team, then I need to talk to them as well. So like and everything you do, like you have to involve multiple people. And so like, all right, we built this product, we're done with it, we're ready to launch it. Well, I don't know anything about marketing. So then I have to go talk to like the marketing folks and say like, how can we make sure that we land this product successfully? And then it's like, okay, yeah, okay, we're ready to launch. We have the product, we have the marketing plan. But wait, now I got to go talk to like the policy team, understand like, is there any policy risks to Google? Is there like trust and safety concerns? Are we are we sure we're going to be able to service everyone correctly? And like, if someone has, does this product work for someone with a disability? Does this product work for someone from this culture versus that culture? Like, does this country understand like what this project is versus like another country? So like, there's extremely high amount of cross.
Okay, awesome. And I think we have time for one more question. Marian, actually, this is like a great question to end off on. So if you want to ask your question, that'd be awesome.
Okay, so this is for all three of you, if you guys want to chime in and give me some of your input. But what are some of the things that you wish you knew, or that you wish you focused more of your time on when you were still in college?
I wish I didn't focus on my tests as much. I don't know if that's the best advice for people who are, you're in school right now, and, everyone has midterms, everyone has finals coming up, I'm sure. But Yeah, I don't think there was a single moment in my career where my GPA mattered. It's all about I I don't know, it's kind of a mix of things. So I'd say getting jobs or getting your dream job, it's it's not about your GPA if you're not, if you're not in a super technical role. I think for engineers it might matter a bit more, that's safe to say, but as far as all the non-tech roles, I'm just like non-tech by the books. I've never been in a technical role, and it's never been about how well you did in school. It's about what you did outside of school. It's about how well-rounded you are, like Averie mentioned before. It's about what you did to better yourself to to be ready for a working environment. I think my biggest thing is that preparing for interviews, I would prepare 10 times more for an interview than if I could do it again. I would prepare 10 times more for an interview than I would for a test, because how you interview, um how you show yourself in that setting, I feel like is something that matters so much more than, something like your GPA in school, how well you did on exams. Um, yeah.
I would say, I think, especially in that process of like looking for a job and looking for your first job, I think it was like, even to Ria's point, like so stressful. I remember like just applying for anything and everything that I thought I could be qualified for, even if I didn't think that I would be remotely interested in it. And I think that would be my biggest piece of advice is, by now you probably have some things that interest you or that you're passionate about, or at least you've taken classes where you're like, that was super boring and I really don't want to do that. And I can tell you that if it was super boring in your class, then you really don't want to be doing it for 8 to 10 hours a day. It will be soul sucking to you. So my advice to myself and to you guys would be to really hone in on jobs that you're applying for, even if you're not there yet, or internships, whatever it might be. Like really read through the descriptions and reach out to Cal Poly grads or reach out to people to say, like, what are you legitimately doing in these roles? Because sometimes the descriptions can be very grandiose and sound very exciting, but what people are actually doing isn't necessarily the same. So that would be my advice to like the juniors and seniors, is to really focus in on things that you enjoy and seek jobs out that have those opportunities, or seek jobs out that have those opportunities down the road, right? Like maybe it's not entry level, but you know that like the next step or the step after that will be something that you're really going to love and be passionate about. That would be my advice, because right now you have so much flexibility with school. You're in class, but a lot of your time can be spent doing whatever you want that you are really excited about. So when you flip to the job market and you're in a job and a role doing things all day long, you want to have that same fun and passion if you can, and incorporate that into your work life, because that's where you're going to be spending a majority of your time. So that's what I would have done, is just really found something that you enjoy. And I think that that takes time, and everybody is trying to get to that. But if you can do that out the gates, that's incredible.
Kevin, you have anything to add?
Sure. I will say we are at 12, so if you do have another meeting that you need to go to, feel free to like drop off. You won't be offending anyone. Yeah, from my perspective, and I feel like you guys aren't going to like this, but I resonate with Ray that like I wish I didn't work as hard in my classes that I did. Like I spent so much time studying for tests and trying to do well in my classes, but like at the end, like you should enjoy the college experience, right? Like something that has helped me the most in work, like in working and in like applying for jobs, wasn't like knowing some specific process or some specific business thing or like how to code well. It's like being like a well-rounded person, like being someone who's like easy to talk to, someone who's like not like a complete like annoying or like boring person to work with. And I think that's the most important part. And like college is the best time to develop that. Like instead of like spending so much time focusing on your classes, like develop other skills, hang out with your friends, and like yeah, just like enjoy college and don't worry about it too much, because like you might not have that internship, you might not have your first job might not be the one that you love or want, but like there's a long life ahead of you outside of college, and you have a lot of time to figure out what you want to do then. So while you are in college, just like enjoy yourself, have fun, and like develop memories that you're going to be fond of when you're working. because like, yeah, you won't have this chance again. So like, don't punish yourself or feel like there's some stressor that you have to get a good job right out of college. Like, yeah, you have time to figure it out, and it's okay if you don't. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I feel like we have a lineup of motivational speakers on this call, but thank you so much for throwing your 2 cents. So yeah, we pretty much are at time right now, but just in case anybody wants to like contact any of you three, maybe like what's the best way to reach out to you guys?
Probably LinkedIn. I think I wrote my full name on the thing. When I'm speaking, like you can probably see it. I think, yeah, that's the easiest method.
I'm happy to give my email just because I don't check LinkedIn very often. So I'll put it in the group message and just feel free to email me if you ever have any questions or you want to connect further. Happy to do so.
Oh, that's smart. I'll do that as well.
I will also do that, I guess. But I prefer LinkedIn because keep my life and my work separated.
And everybody else, if you guys have like any other questions, or maybe like you guys want to be added to like emails for future user like events, you guys can also put your emails in the chat, and we'll make sure to parcel that information and accordingly. So yeah, thank you, Ria, Averie, Kevin. Thank you guys so much for coming today and like giving us your 2 cents and like life advice. It was really awesome. Everybody else is muted, but on behalf of everyone, I'm pretty sure we all like really enjoyed it and had like awesome takeaways. Yeah, thank you so much. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to like just directly message these people. I think they put their emails in the chat. Right. Awesome. So yeah, thank you guys so much for coming, and enjoy the rest of your quarantine. Stay safe. Wash your hands.
Thanks for organizing.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Having
Yeah,
us. Yeah,
thanks for having us.